The NBA playoffs are underway with neither local team involved, and here to make some sense of it all is Brian Mahoney, NBA writer for the Associated Press. Brian, first of all, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, let's begin with the Knicks. Okay, it's a mess. I think, first of all you guys who covered the team this season deserve some kind of an award, but that's an issue for another show. Phil Jackson gets a 2-year extension despite his futility since coming here. I mean, what is his vision, man? Where's this franchise going?
Well, they're not going anywhere quickly, that's for sure. And, you know, he was given a 5-year deal with the option to leave after 3, and Jim Dolan, the owner, said, no, we're going to give you 2 more years. You can serve it out. And not because of what he's accomplished, that's for sure. He has a style he wants to play. He has a system he wants to run, and he's not going to deviate from that. And it's not winning right now. I'm not sure it's ever going to win, but he's sticking with that, win or lose.
What is the biggest roadblock here to success as far as Phil's thinking is concerned? You and I have talked, and I see a lot at the Garden, and the whole triangle thing, got to run the triangle. And then, you know, the NBA's changed a lot in the last 6 or 8 years in terms of moving the ball, three-point shooters, guys who can defend the three. Has he not caught up, Phil Jackson, or refused to go along with the way the league is headed, do you think?
It looks a lot that way, and it is troubling. Like you say, there are certainly, you look at like in San Antonio, Greg Popovich hates a three-point shot, hates it. But you have to shoot it now, and he's got the team now with three-point shooters. You look at even what Pat Riley did before he came to New York. In Los Angeles, he played one way, came with the Knicks, played another way. That's what the great, executives do, but Phil Jackson doesn't want to do it. He wants to stick with his way, and maybe with the right players, his way can win, but he doesn't have the right players, and they're losing and losing a lot.
Now, speaking of personnel, some of your colleagues who cover the team on a daily basis, several of them, Brian, told me that Phil Jackson doesn't have relationships with other front office management dudes around the league, and still a lot of folks in the league, because of his perceived arrogance when he was head coach of the Bulls and the Lakers, they don't want to do him any favors in terms of trades and things like that. Do you think that's part of the situation? Because, his record in terms of trades and adding players is not terrific, and I'm being diplomatic there. Are those problems with him, no relationships and the way he's perceived?
It was one of the concerns I had when he came into the job.
Right.
Certainly he's a guy who is, he kind of looked at as too smart, almost by a lot of people, arrogant is probably the word I'm looking for. And people, he doesn't have a lot of relationships with, rivals. And you do have to have that. You have to get along with people. You do it for me, I do it for you. And you're right, I don't think that happens with other executives, with agents. And I do think it's hurt the Knicks quite a bit.
That said, how is he going to be successful in the next 2 years if he doesn't have relationships and can wheel and deal, as it were?
Well, it's one thing if you can say, okay, my general manager will do it, or the guy below it will do it. Steve Mills gets on with agents, great. But the guy who has to close the deals is Phil. And we're not seeing that necessarily done, I don't think, enough. And it is a concern because 3 years in, I'm not saying you have to win titles yet, but you have to have shown something is going to work. And that just has not been the case.
What is the likely, in your mind, off-season scenario involving Carmelo Anthony?
Well, I think Phil Jackson made it pretty clear now that, they want to go separate ways. But it's not easy to do.
Sure.
When you look at that kind of trade, how hard it is to trade players at all, let alone when you have a salary like Carmelo does at his age, trying to make that all work. The most likely scenario is probably going to be a trade that doesn't work out for the Knicks. It's hard to imagine how Phil can win that trade. People may say, I'd love to have Carmelo, but not what Phil said. He wants a significant player back. He's not going to get that, I don't think. It's just hard to imagine people are going to give up what it takes to get Carmelo. So I think if you really want him gone and Carmelo really wants to go, I think you're talking about a trade where you're going to say that's all Phil Jackson got for an all-star player.
And more than one team, Brian, I'm guessing, if the Knicks want any kind of return, you probably have to get another team involved, maybe 3 total teams,
Well, when you talk about a salary involved, yes, it's hard to find a two-way deal. Yeah, I do think a third team probably is I think they'll try and make that happen. Again, Mark, you know how hard it is to make those kind of deals work out. And like I say, if you really, really want to trade a guy, you can really do it, but you can't necessarily get what you want in return.
Do you think Carmelo Anthony will expand, given his frustration, and we all saw it this season, you saw it firsthand, night after another brutal loss. Do you think he'll expand his list of teams that he would agree to go to?
I think he will now. He loves New York, and I thought ultimately he would say, nope, if it's not 1 or 2 or 3 teams, I really want to be here. But you can, as you say, see the frustration now, and as long as Phil's here, I think Carmelo has lost trust that he can win in New York, and he'll look to go elsewhere.
Please tell me, Brian, that the Knicks are not going to re-sign Derrick Rose. No, I mean, you got to tell me that. I mean, I know he played pretty well this season, but then yet another injury. And you got to feel like he's going to want, and his agent is going to want, a big 4 or 5 year mega deal. The Knicks can't do that, right? Do you see them re-signing him in any scenario?
I can't rule it out entirely. I really think it depends on if there's any market for Derrick Rose. And I thought he did play pretty well until he had the knee surgery. And now you're talking about 3, 4 knee surgeries. Can you really give a guy a long-term deal there? So I think the lack of offers he'll get, I think, would make him want to come back to the Knicks for a pretty reasonable offer. Will the Knicks give him one? I don't know, but I do think the option's there. If the Knicks want to keep him, I wouldn't rule it out quite yet.
So many decisions to be made as far as the Knicks organization is concerned, especially roster-wise. In your mind, who stays for the future after this season is over now as we head to the offseason? Which players are valuable?
Well, difference between value and who's going to stay. I mean, Noah's going to be here because he's not valuable anywhere else. The Knicks are stuck with that contract, of course. Courtney Lee, they played well. The young guys, Porzingis, Hernan Gomez played well. Phil Jackson raved about Ron Baker, who undrafted player. I think he'll be here.
They like Holiday as
well. Justin Holiday played well. So you're talking, that's half the team right there, I guess. And then you've got to find, someone for Carmelo's spot, Derrick Rose, we don't know. And they're going to have, obviously, a lottery pick. So that's another player coming in. And beyond that, let's see how Phil does in free agency.
That's where I was going next with the lottery pick. I think the general consensus is the Knicks are going to be somewhere between 7 and 10. That's the most likely scenario. Brian, there's going to be a quality player waiting for them that low. This is a deep draft, especially point guard wise, with 4 or 5 expected to be selected in the lottery part of the draft. What in your mind is the Knicks' #1 need? Now that doesn't mean that's what Phil Jackson is going to go for. What do you think they need out of the draft?
Well, even Phil said yesterday, point guard is a necessity, whether it's free agency or draft. Obviously, this draft has a point guard type, great point guards. The question with the Knicks every year in the draft since Phil's been here has been, if you're drafting for a triangle type player, the kind of point guards Phil always had when he coached is not what you're looking at these guys are. So it's hard to really gauge what he's going to draft, but it's hard to imagine you can't get a good player. Like you say, this is a very well-regarded draft, going to have a top 10 pick. Some way or another, they're going to get a good player in there.
Okay, real quick before we let you go, your MVP this season, I was leaning Harden almost the whole season. Now I'm on the Westbrook bandwagon. What about you?
I went Harden almost the same way as you. I was on the Harden bandwagon, almost changed at the end. Westbrook played almost too well not to give it to him, but I stuck with Harden.
Oh, okay, cool. Is there a team in the East that can challenge the Cavs? Defensively, Cleveland has not even been close to the team that won the title last year. Is there one team in the East to keep an eye on?
They're beatable now. I like Toronto. I really think they upgraded when they got the forwards in there, Tucker and Ibaka late in the season. DeRozan had a great year scoring. I give him a chance.
Yeah, I think DeRozan's still one of the most underrated players in the league, right? It's like, how does anybody? It's a mid-range jumper, man. He doesn't take threes, and everyone ignores him. He's terrific. I agree with you on the Raptors. Out west, is there any team that can really make Golden State nervous?
San Antonio for sure makes them nervous. They beat them a couple times during the year. You never rule them out, that Greg Popovich team. But I think the Golden State Warriors, if they're healthy, they know they can be A1 4 times. But no one wants to ever play San Antonio. Everyone has such respect for that organization.
Okay, if you had to pick the finals right now, is it rematch time, or do you think someone else could make it?
I'm sticking with the rematch, but I'm not as sure as I was. Cleveland has played poorly enough for a long enough time now that I think they're beatable, but I'm not going to say you can beat them 4 times yet.
And barring something unforeseen, a Warriors win?
I think so. Yeah, okay. I think they're the best team.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Brian Mahoney, Associated Press, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, always good to see you. And we'll be right back. Don't go away.